research shows that 70% of all jobs are not published publicly on job sites, and as much as 80% of jobs are filled through personal and professional connections. On this episode of Think and Drink podcast, we're going to be diving deep into the university college life and really talking about anything and everything as a couple of post grads after graduation from college, looking back and then looking towards our career, kind of reflecting on those 4 years. And so when I think about college, I think about so many different things, but all you hear nowadays is the okay, student debt is being canceled, right? $10,000. You hear about, Gary Vee to just about whoever it is, like that is a quote unquote, or even by societal standards, like successful. They look at college and they say that, oh, it's a waste of time and money. And I'm not going to argue against that, but I do think that there is a little bit more to going to college for 4 years that adds, a little bit of value. But before getting into that, I'd ask you, like, when you think about university and going to college for 4 years, what are like the main things that you think about when you look back at 4 years? What do you think when you think about college? Do you think about education? Do you think about experiences? Do you think about like growth, like learning? Like, what are those like key, like, I guess, themes when you think about the, university and college experience that you had?
Yeah, that's interesting. And well, you and I went to school together, so I'm sure we have kind of like similar viewpoints there. But the first thing on my mind is just the experience and the friends, like the relationship, shared experiences. Um, I think, yeah, it was so much fun. Um, which, like, paying what you pay for college just to have fun probably isn't justifiable, right? But
Right.
that definitely comes to mind first. And then, yeah, just the opportunity to explore, like without the immediacy of like needing to make a bunch of money, like you don't have a family to provide for. Um, your one job is really school, or if you're work, you might work on the side too, or a lot of people do, right? So you work a job to pay rent and stuff like that. But your priority is school, so like the opportunity to explore there and learn, I think was super valuable. Uh, I don't think I capitalized on it as much as I should have. Like college is definitely like I look back and I think about a lot of things I regret, um, but yeah, it was a learning experience. I wouldn't take it back. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, right, we both went to Arizona State University, and I'm very much in the same camp, right? Like, I think back to those four, and experiences, fun, like, is the top, like, the cream, like, the very top of what I think about when I think about college. And the way I've been actually thinking about that is for many people, right, it is like a trial adult life. You basically get your one priority is to do school, and you have everything else, but you got to try out being like independent and things like that. And I think those experiences are like super valuable. But I do see that the the general like contrasting like statement to that is, oh, you go to college and you spend 4 years and like, yeah, you have fun, but you rack up mountains of debt, you have all these issues, and like when it comes to like your finances. And I actually totally agree, right? Like college is expensive, but I also think that you as a person get to choose like how expensive your college is going to be, right? Both of us went to Arizona State, like I said, and we also um, we also are in state, right? Like neither of us chose to leave the state and pay those exorbitant prices that I know multiple people that I work with today that have six figures college debt. And that is not because they're stupid people or that they're bad with money. It's because they left their state and they went to either a private college or they went just out of state. And so I think there's that balance of what you know what you choose to do in that college and that financing. And if you were to take like me going to a private school and then ending up with $120,000 of debt versus like me spending 4 years in like building a business or building or self improving myself, obviously everything's going to go towards, hey, you should spend 4 years building yourself and improving yourself because that's way a higher ROI. But my question to you would be, do you think in those 4 years that you would actually be doing self improvement, building yourself, building businesses? Because I honestly don't think in those 4 years I would have had the clarity of mind to have like put the discipline in place to like actually do those things.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head there, because that's why I say it's full of regret, because I look back and I'm like, oh, dude, so much time wasted. Like, so much time just wasted doing nothing, right? You're out partying or out like, hanging out with friends, or, it's not really like focused time, and your studying is done like what, the 12 hours before the test, right? You're in the library for like 12 hours and then you go back to doing whatever you were doing before. But I agree, it's like it's easy to look back and think that you could have improved it, but you're right. It's like the mindset was not there. And I do think at that age it's difficult to have like clear thoughts or even an understanding of the world, right? And how business works or what opportunities exist. Um, and that was one of the notes I had when we were thinking about this topic was let's see, like the lack of understanding, at least for me, I didn't understand what my options were. Like when you're going into college and you think about like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? That age-old question that you get asked when you're what, in kindergarten. Like I don't think my options changed much from, or my understanding of my options changed between when I was in kindergarten and then when I got to college. It was like, all right, you kind of like, I really only I have this limited understanding of the world, and you want me to make a decision within these confines. And I was like, man, it'd be so cool if there was a tool out there that would like tell you about, I mean, even trade industries, or like understanding like cloud engineers. I know you've been working with some of those guys lately, or like who would have thought that like if you're looking at software engineering, it's like, oh, I could program microprocessors or I could build like desktop apps, and those are like your two options. But it's like, no, there are like so many options that you could dive into. So, but yeah, sorry to get on a tangent there, but that's kind of what I was thinking. Um, just the lack of understanding and clarity, which I think you hit perfectly.
Yeah, and I actually only came to that conclusion of like what like when you think about the things from you totally had it right from kindergarten to going to college, right? There's like basically five careers. Maybe it's engineering, it's law, being a lawyer, it's being a doctor, it's maybe being a developer, like, right, you do computer science. And the fifth one would be like they just group all of the arts into like one, right? Those are your five different careers that you can choose from. But you inside of those like large buckets is so much, right? Like just take legal. Legal, there's it can be a lawyer, you can be a paralegal, right? There's like and that's my limited knowledge of the legal system, right? You can go deeper into each of those firms. But um the biggest thing I realized taking doing internships and like applying for jobs and interviews and what I tell my like younger brother as well as like other people that I meet, they're like, what should I do, or like how should I approach interviews? And the number one thing I ask them is, you need to, or not ask them, what I tell them is, ask these people you're talking to, what is their day to day life, right? Because the actual like title that they get, right? Oh, like you said, cloud architect, or like, whatever it is, like doctor. Okay, great. But what their day to day life is way more indicative of what you're going to be doing every single day. And it's like why I didn't do like a full like software development, background for not background, but like job is because day to day you are looking through code, finding bugs, or you're doing testing and you're doing QA. You're not developing really groundbreaking things on your day to day, and your day to day is like a slog, right? And once I realized to shift like the lens in which I'm evaluating like jobs or careers, that was like a huge breakthrough because I'm like, oh wait, I started off as biomedical engineering. I shifted to mechanical engineering and then ended up where I did because I started talking to a biomedical engineer. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's great, but you're not going to be doing anything cool until you get your PhD." I'm like, "Well, okay, well, I don't know if I'm really ready to go do a PhD. I'm not great at school as is. Like school is great, like it's fun and all, but." And then I talked to a mechanical engineer. He's like, "Oh well, you're not actually doing anything hands on. You're more or less like sketching things and like making sure that the designs you get are like valid, right? Like they're going to be able to handle the loads that they're going through." And when I started talking and realizing, oh, your day to day and the title that you're getting is completely different things in a lot of those scenarios. So that that clarity, right, is so important. It is really interesting how you just don't do it, and especially when it's the world, you don't like the clarity doesn't come until you start talking to these people, but also the world of like technology beyond like big tech, right? Like the small world, which is like the most innovative world in the world. I know many other people who started off in just like high school or they didn't go to college, but as they started to work they were like, oh wait, there's a huge opportunity in technology, and they started to learn their own development skills. They started working in different parts of tech, and it was completely self-taught. And they have all come to like the same statement of, man, I wish someone told me that I can have a job as like being like a developer in these like in these different fields. Like no one ever tells us at a young age that we can be a developer. You don't have to be a doctor or an astronaut or a lawyer. You can be so much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if the resources were available and I just simply didn't apply myself. Like I don't think I went to a single career fair at ASU.
I can't say I did either.
Dude. Yeah, so like maybe the tools were there and we're just talking out our rear ends here, but yeah,
but
yeah. I think you learn a lot more in the marketplace too, right?
but
Like you learn
the
about the opportunities.
the point of the career fair is like the end state of your like education, right? Like if you're going to career fairs, you're a junior or a senior. That's like not the ideal time to be like realizing that the world is a lot bigger than the small pond that you've been swimming in, right? Like even if you came and we went to those and we're like, oh wow, it's like we would probably be considered too late at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I know. I wish I think part of it is like going around and talking to people, like you're saying. And I think a big part of it for me was like just the self-confidence to apply myself. Like when you don't know what you want to do and you start applying for internships, it's like it's hard to sell yourself and believe in yourself enough to like answer those questions that are like, oh, what makes you a good fit for this role? It's like, dude, I don't know. Like, it sounded kind of cool. That's all I really needed here. So, yeah, I think just the lack of uh like I don't know what to call it, like not being so self-conscious and knowing you're gonna screw up and just being like, yeah, I did that internship. I sucked at it and I let some people down, but you know, like we have intern or I work with interns now and I'm like, dude, I don't expect really anything from you. Like expectations are super low.
Rock bottom.
So, yeah, I
I
wish I was just a little more like brazen in college.
Yeah, and I do think that's like the beauty of it, right? Is you can look back and say, "Oh wow, there were like missed opportunities to be bolder, bigger, like take more bets or risks." But we also had like when you go to college and you have that, you also have that, basic baseline like safety net essentially, where even if you didn't take those opportunities, it wasn't like the world was ending, right? It was, oh, you weighed out your options, you took a look, you didn't, maybe feel confident or you didn't think you could do it at the time, and that was okay, right? And then also the pressure to take those big opportunities, like, oh, I don't know if I'm confident in like the fit here or whatever it is. It, I think a lot of that like lack of confidence stems from the fact that somewhere internally, all of us have been told that after college, you're starting like the rest of your life as from a career. Like that first job you get, like that's going to define everything. That's your first step into building the rest of your life. And in a lot of ways, it is, right? But it's not because you chose that job. It's because you're starting the next chapter in your life. The job is like literally irrelevant. Like you might be learning great skills, and that's great, or you might not be, but you're going to be learning that like, oh, I'm like a full grown adult, and I'm ready to like take on the next chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the gravity or the perceived gravity of that decision can be really heavy at the time, but like you said, I don't think, yeah, it's literally just a title like on your LinkedIn at this point. I don't know, do people still use resumes? Do you give in paper resumes?
For resumes, no,
I
we get a
guess,
lot of, so like I've done a lot of interviewing and things. My company I work for, they don't do like, thankfully they don't do cover letters. I take resumes, I look at like their points, and I go, okay, like when I think of a resume, I think of talking points in an interview. Like, hey, I see this is on here. That sounds like really interesting. Like, what did you do with that? Right? It's never like I take it face value because I think there's so much more to that person. And there might be so much less, right? That's the beauty of it. It's like if I point to something on your resume and like what you talk about is like either less or more than what it says, then that's like completely indicative of what you were actually doing at that time. But
yeah.
I will say this, like I was looking it up, um, resumes and applying for jobs, and I found this really interesting stat, and it says, you know, research shows that 70% of all jobs are not published publicly on job sites, and as much as 80% of jobs are filled through personal and professional connections. So when I think about that, and I even think about resumes, boom, irrelevant, just does not matter, right? Like 80%, your resume is fl- fluff at most. It gets you through the door. But the second thing I think about is when people go about like hating on college and like, oh, it's so much money, you don't do all these things. If 80% of jobs are filled through personal and professional connections, I think to all of my personal and professional connections as of today, and so many of them stem from connections that I made while I was in university, both professionally and personally. Right, there were internships that I got through because of my education. Right, or I was a student studying something, or they were part of like the groups that I had in college themselves. So it, like when I was looking through those things, it kind of reinforced the idea that as long as you're not putting yourself in such a hole through educational debt, then college might actually have the returns that you would normally be looking for when you spend 4 years kind of experimenting, right? Like it's a literal trial, and I thought that was like super interesting. And I feel like that's true when I think about people who are getting hired. It is, oh, I know this, like I see this job opening, right? I see this, like, hey, I think you'd be a great fit. And the power of your network and how you build that, I think, is still severely understated.
Yeah. Damn, dude, that's crazy. That stat is pretty crazy. What was it? 70% or 80%?
70% of all jobs are not published publicly on job sites, and as much as 80% of jobs are filled through personal and professional connections.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's nuts. Just to think
right?
about the sheer number of like job listings there are. That's crazy to think 70%, that's only 30% of all active job listings. Wow.
Yeah. And so it's
Dang.
like it puts a lot of the the context and it and it did also make that argument for it makes actually like now that I'm talking to you about that, it makes both arguments of one going to college, but also going to college at a really premium school or like an Ivy League school. If you're 80% of jobs are being filled through personal and professional connections, then if you go to these high standard schools in which, supposedly the people who go there are high, also like, high standard people who expect the most and are high quality, then you would assume your network starts at that level, right? It starts at a higher level than maybe someone below. And I think a lot of the technology today kind of helps with that gap where it's like it doesn't matter who you are, if you have a good idea and you can develop and you can do things, like you can get there just as good as anyone. But I do think you start at a little bit of a uh, you know a head start when you have those like different network connections coming from a high quality school.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a, wonder if it's like an equal distribution or what that would look um, like if you're looking at C-suite executives, like those probably aren't posted. I bet more than 80% of those are filled without a listing. So I bet you're right. I mean, I don't know, like I wonder what the tipping point would be where it's like, okay, if you spend this much on school, you can expect to receive like, let's say like 20 job offerings through your connections at this pay grade. And I wonder at what point it would be like, okay, as you move up to Ivy League, you get offered maybe fewer roles, but it's at this pay grade. I don't know. That'd be interesting. But but yeah, I think that's the value in an MBA, right? Like you go to a prestigious school for an MBA just to make friends with all of the other MBA people.
Yeah, so like I agree. I think that is today the value of the MBA would be like you were going to a 2 or 3 year networking event, essentially, right? That's what it is. The founders are like one of the founders of Allbirds. He's coming from like that's like Indiana University MBA or something like that. That's like how he got started. I don't remember what college it was, but I unless like that's the MBA is where that price point really kicks in. If you're paying for your MBA out of pocket, like an executive MBA or just a regular MBA at a good school, in those 2 to 3 years is going to cost you 6 figures at a good school. So you better be like, I think so. I guess like the story there would be if you're willing to pay those 6 figures to go to school for 2 years, then you need to do the opposite of what you did in undergrad, right? Like you need to come show up every single day, coming to like I'm gonna milk every second of the education I'm going to be getting, and I'm going to be networking with every single person that I see to make that worthwhile. Because otherwise, the only way I'm going to be getting an MBA will be a company is paying for it. Because between the resources that you have on online and the ability to get like real world experiences, I just don't see how educationally the MBA is able to provide any value that would be worth that price tag.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's the education. I agree. It's definitely the network at that point. So, dude, maybe you don't even get good grades in your MBA, or I think a lot of them are pass fail. Um,
Oh,
but it's just a networking event, right? So you just basically go and meet everyone, and maybe you work part time and you only go to all the classes you need to just to get through it. But I don't know.
would you
Yeah,
go back to school?
no, no, no way. No, I don't think so. I can't imagine a time, I don't know. I can't imagine a world in which I would. Maybe to get like trained in something. Maybe I might go, maybe to like go to like a trade school or something if I want to learn like a craft for leisure, if you want to consider that school. But no, I wouldn't go get an MBA or anything. Would you?
Like I said, only if it was paid for. I just I have personally interviewed MBA students. I have seen MBA students who got their MBA like directly out of college or even their masters at that point, right? And many of the companies and my company themselves have turned down people because they went to school for business for almost 5 or 6 years, but there was no business in between, right? So how can you go to school for business for 6 years, but then there was no, like, you can't, you're not learning anything applicable at that point because you haven't been able to apply anything you've learned, right? And so at that point, you might be more of like a business philosopher, right? Like you're looking from the outside in, and you're like, oh well, like yeah, you could have done all these, but it's like to your boots on ground, day in day out, like actually making those decisions. Like I just don't know how much, right? You learning from a textbook or some like concept matters versus maybe like I guess at an MBA, like hopefully your professors are like seasoned veterans who happen to be like professors, like that's what they've decided to do, and after they've retired, they've come from that world of like day in day out building businesses, like doing like businesses at scale, and that's where the value is. But yeah, there's just no way for the price tag, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even the price tag for me. I just have no interest and there's no incentive for me to go back right now. Um, like I think you could justify the price tag at some level. Like Kush is going back. He's getting his MBA. But he's going to Harvard and like that's like your elite like networking, you know. So I think there's value in that, but yeah, I'd rather be building a business because I'm going to go to school to study business to come back and do the same thing. So it's like, I don't know. But yeah, like we said, the network, it's just not justifiable right now.
And I
But
found I personally found school painful too. It just wasn't like it going to school getting grades like that just was not. I didn't enjoy my day to day. Right? Like that wasn't like, well, I enjoyed my day to day in college because I was doing fun things, but like the act of studying to study just wasn't there. I didn't care for it.
yeah, I didn't mind my school or my classes. Mine was more active because I studied design. So it was like I was actually like doing stuff and making stuff. So that was fun. Um, but yeah, dude, like math, no way. Math or economics or any of that stuff, no way. Did not enjoy that. I
It,
did have a couple notes written here. I think we can run through. Um, so I had a couple notes on kind of like I said, my regrets are like I don't know. I don't want to say regrets, but when looking back, things I would maybe wish I had known. So maybe advice to, Ryan like 6 years ago. Um, I think a big one is mindset, which we kind of touched on. Just to see like basically, and this was a mindset that I kind of started when I started working for myself, and it's basically to combat imposter syndrome. So you just try and see how far you can take it, like how long you can get away with something. Which sounds kind of bad, right? Like with no, I don't
keep
mean
up the
like ill
act.
intention, like yeah, like I'm not trying to get away with taking people's money and running, but um but basically just you're like fooling yourself into like basically doing something and seeing how many people will believe you can do it. So um that was one note. And then another big one I think is trying to build an audience, which I think kind of plays into our general concept here, right? Um like even on Twitter or I think TikTok, just the creator economy, like we spoke about last time. Um, there's so much room in that space. Like, if you think about how much time people are spending on their phones consuming media, there is not enough media out there to be to like fill that gap. Not yet, at least. So I think that would be a huge note. Like, I wish I had considered, and it kind of falls back on the confidence thing. Like, right, it's hard to put yourself out there. I've been tweeting more lately, and it's like, dude, it's not like particularly fun for me. And it's like, I'm vulnerable. I'm tweeting about stuff that, like, I'm not sometimes not even proud of. Like, maybe I lost a client, or maybe I'm sharing something personal where someone might say, like, oh, that's not real. That didn't happen. It's like, oh man, am I like making a bigger deal out of this than I should? But What do you think about that? Would you have built a Twitter audience or something in college?
So, a question I was going to ask and I was thinking about is if you went back and you took that perspective of, right, like, so you had the reason I had the catalyst of you're running your own business and that catalyst shifted your mindset of, all right, like, let me look at all the different levers I have in my life and seeing which ones I can pull to build the audiences to, like, get you to that end state that you desire, right? And you looked at your life and the levers, right? And so I was thinking about if I took those 4 years in college and I looked at all the levers, right, which are the opportunities, the paths for opportunity that you have there, I think back and I go, oh man, like yeah, those are like endless, right? But social media, I even think about just for fun, the kids that went to our school who are Twitter famous, right? And all they do is like they tweet jokes, but they have literal hundred like 200, 300,000 followers, and they tweeted jokes, right? That's what they were doing in college, and they built that audience. And I think I totally relate to you in the sense of I don't know back then if I would have had the confidence to have put myself out there in that sense, to have like taken it seriously and said like, oh, I'm gonna try and build this audience, or I'm gonna try and do that. Like I think I was too busy like trying to figure out like what I wanted to do with everything, right? Like it was like so such like a pivotal time, right? Where it's like you're going through college, you're trying like everything left and right, and just trying to grow like unintentionally, right? Like I wasn't trying to grow on purpose, but like it just was one of those points in time, and so I don't. If I look back, yeah, there's I think those are points of like optimization. I could have optimized my college experience and like taken advantage of the access to resources, right? Even talking to professors, right? The professors, whether you're at a good university or a bad one or quote unquote bad one, those are people who have decades of experience in their field and are choosing to teach. That means they're probably open to having a conversation and helping you. And like I think that's like something I look back and going, dang, if I had talked to like all of my professors, like had a coffee date with all of them, the knowledge that I probably would have retained, like those like life pro tips that I would have probably gotten from them would have been, priceless.
Yeah, I actually had that in my notes too. Was like engaging with professors more. Um, just 'cause like it's their job to be there and most of them want to be there, right? Like you get some that are not fun to be around, but dude, most of mine were super cool. Like every time I went to office hours, they were super nice. I think I just had it in my head that it was like I don't know, like drill sergeant and like army guy relationship where it's like they like have the instructions and I'm supposed to follow them when in reality it was more like I don't know, like a mentorship or like what was Kung Fu Panda's
Insane.
who's the guy in the turtle? Yeah. Yeah,
Master
bro, that's more
Oogway.
like the yes. Yeah, bro, all of your professors are master Oogways out there. So super chill, old, move real slow till they get excited.
Which do you think that like perspective was your age, right? Like I think of like I just came back from like I met a bunch of the people who do my job that just got hired out of university. So they're like a few years younger than me. And like you could tell that even just a few years in just age difference, how they talk to you, how they treat you, it's like, oh, it's like this. It's a one of them called me old. I'm not even like that much older than that, right? Like literally three years older. But like the age played such a big role, and I wonder. Like I also felt like that the gap between me and my professors was like, oh, they're like this entity that comes to teach you, and like you better like show up and like follow all their rules. And in reality, I agree. Like I think they would have loved a conversation. Like I think they would have genuinely loved that.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, right? Like most of them would have.
Yeah,
enjoyed that. Yeah. There are a couple I know I would not want to see outside of the classroom. But but yeah, it's funny you brought that up because I actually had that in my notes too. Um, I'm trying to think of what else. Building an audience.
If
Oh,
you,
okay.
oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Um, okay, here, I'll let you go after this. But okay, so I saw this on Twitter like a long time ago. Maybe like a couple years ago. And I think it was Peter Levels, or maybe it wasn't him. I know he did something like this, but basically I want to know, and this whole talk of mindset might change some things, but like if you had the opportunity to get like an angel micro investment from someone in college, like we're talking like maybe now like 5 to 10 grand, or even like 2 to 5 grand, or something like that. Like let's assume you're not going to put it towards college, like you have some ideas you might be wanting to work on. Like would that make a difference in your college career, right? Like would you be able to apply that money effectively?
If
And would it even
in,
be impactful maybe?
mm, so if an angel investor, someone came and invested whatever the amount was, I think personally, and it could be just like the mindset I had. I think that would have given me like that catalyst to just go like let's focus on this thing, right? Like I think that there's something very powerful in the idea that someone external has like faith in you, like has sees like that potential in you and your idea, and has invested any amount of money into that, right? Because ultimately that third party that does that wants one thing out of you, and that's success, right? Like that is their ulterior motive. They do not care about literally anything else about you, right? They just want whatever your idea is to succeed. And I think if I had any amount, I definitely would have definitely shifted gears and focused on whatever that idea was, and started to like put like more time and effort into it because I knew someone one was backing me and that expectation to like, hey, I put like whether they gave it, strings attached or no strings attached, I probably would have shifted those gears and been like, okay, wow, this is, an opportunity. Someone else sees the potential in whatever it is I see, and that means like let's kick it up a notch. Um, and I think that would have been pretty, you know, um, game changing. But then I also think about um, if you looked at like the entirety of your college experience that way as well. If someone gave you like the 30 or 40 grand and said, hey, here's 4 years, make the most of it, what do you do? Right? Or like if you even yourself were to think about it that way and said like, hey, you save up like 2 to 3 grand and you act like an angel investor to yourself, what would you do with that money? So yeah, I do think, but for me in college, that external validation probably would have gone a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but I agree with your perspective, right? I think it would have been like when you're in college and you're looking at like we said, this huge decision of like picking a career and all this, and like all the jobs you have to apply for and all the rejections you're going to get. It's like this huge mountain that you're going to have to climb. And when you get like a chance to shortcut that, when it's like, all right, dude, like here's 5 grand, go, like I know even like I don't know how you would even do the application process or something, but like it would just be like, all right, yeah, I'll give you a shot. Here's 5 grand, go make the most of it. I'd be like, holy crap, like this is my opportunity to not have to climb that freaking mountain, like, and go through all that crap. So I agree. I think it is that validation that's one of the most powerful parts of that. But
Like
I thought,
it's like getting a viral video. If you were to get a viral video, the actions you take after that virality is like the exact same thing. You've all of a sudden had this validation. What do you do with it? That's like how I'm thinking about it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
But I thought it was super interesting because I saw it on Twitter and you just see all these replies and I think a lot of them are from like I don't know, like people in India or like underserved countries, right? Where they're like, I could finally buy a laptop and start my design business or start coding or whatever it was, which was like way more impactful, right? Than like us talking about whatever. Maybe we buy like an Instagram account and start selling ads or something. I don't know what you do with 5 grand, but like it would have a much greater impact over there. But I was like, oh, I thought that would be an interesting frame for our conversation. But what were
Yeah.
you gonna say?
I will say this. I distinctly remember sitting in Calculus 2 or 3 looking at Peter Thiel's program in which you submit your application for an idea. He gives you about like 100, 200K, a place to stay, and you stay in like an incubation tank in Florida with like other people, and you have to quit your college career. Like that was like the condition. It's like you submit, you get accepted, and you have to stop going to college right then and there. And I remember sitting there. It's like that's what me and like a couple of my friends in like my group in the calculus class. So we'd sit there, just completely looking at the board and going, "Yeah, there's no way in hell. Maybe this is the right way." And like we started like thinking of ideas to try and apply to this application to get saved out of having to study for this test for calculus. They're like, "This is the only way out. Like, is to get some kind of funding like that."
Dang. Dude, I don't know if I would have done that in college. There's no way. There's no way.
Really, I I was struggling with the truly innovative idea in which someone would pluck you out of college, put you in a room, and tell you to build it. That's where I struggled. Rather, I can come up with ideas that will become revenue generating, right? But to be like, again, going to that idea that an investor believes in your success, right? And like the potential and the amount that they invest is like their basically internal evaluation of the potential of your idea and the potential of your idea as well as their confidence in your ability to execute on that idea. Right? Like that equation is their investment. If they invest like a huge amount, they one see that the opportunity is there, like your total addressable market for that idea is massive, but they also see that you as a founder or the person who's thought of the idea and is executing on it can actually execute to some part of that addressable market. And if someone hands me like $100,000, $200,000, I think about like what would that idea be, right? To actually be that innovative, right? Like, and I was obviously thinking about it from the perspective of applying to those like that program, right? Like, you have to give that idea, and that was like that's when I first realized like, okay, wow, like this is like some you have to be really thinking or like have something that's truly groundbreaking for to do that versus like the real world isn't really like that. It's like, can you solve a problem? And then how well can you solve it? Like that's all it is, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The real world kind of, I mean, like investment capital is still kind of like that. It's like getting an idea and getting funding or private equity. But yeah, yeah, dude, I never heard of that. If I heard of that in college, though, I don't think I would have considered it seriously at all. There's no way. I was having too much fun, honestly, dude, in college. I was like, it'd
Dude,
be hard for
calculus
me
is
to leave.
hard. Calculus is hard. I was really sweating it. We were like anything to get me out of here.
I think the highest I went was like, I don't know, dude. Was there an algebra 2? Was that a thing? That might have been what I did.
I think there is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think there's.
Yeah, did that one sort of. But I'm trying to think what else. If I have any.
What would be your like if you had to do college the same way you did it, but you were you did want to like be like starting your own business, like you wanted to try like your hand at business building, right, during those 4 years. What do you think you're like looking back now and what you know now? What would have been your like mini business, like your side hustle during those years?
Yeah, the side hustle question. I don't know, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I changed my major 3 times. So for me to have picked a side hustle would have been, I don't know. Honestly, I was super into photography throughout all of that, and that's unrelated to school. So maybe like started freelance photography or something like that. But I don't know. I'll think on that. What do you have an idea that you've been thinking on?
I think um so right, like I felt like through college like had a huge access to like groups of people, right, like large groups of people. I think you could tap into like networks like relatively easy, and so I felt like one thing I thought about would be like simple like t-shirt designs or like t-shirts, right? Like could you start like a quote unquote clothing brand, and I think you could like localize it to the different like so we went to ASU, any of like the themes of like let's say you made t-shirts for beating like our rivals University of Arizona, and you made like cool t-shirt designs for that, and then you sold that before our rivalry games or even throughout the year, because you have access to like these like social networks and the ability to like spread the word like at mass. I think that could be really interesting. I think the hardest part of that would be the capital to get the shirts printed, right, that first set of shirts, right, those things I think would be pretty tough. So that was like one of the first things I thought of like when I was thinking about that. um but yeah, like definitely that, or fixing people's like computers, or like doing like simple like tech support. Because I think like being just generally computer savvy, like just not even knowing anything like software or like tech, like actually technical, I think you could have made a pretty solid business off of like just random people like, oh, like my computer doesn't work like when I try to do things, like, oh, don't take it to Apple, like let me see it first. You don't have to open it, like it's like probably just shutting it down and restarting it, right? Like that level of like support, I think a majority of people who are like a little tech savvy probably could do, and like make a killing. Like just like first year in the dorms, you put a poster up that says, "Hey, like you have a tech problem, like run it by me. If I can't fix it in 10 minutes, then it's free or something like that." Like you just like get someone in the door, you meet someone, and like you fix their problem. I think that could be a really interesting idea to do as well. With and then no capital right needed.
Mm, yeah, yeah, no capital, and you could probably be on campus somewhere, honestly. You could probably set up in some like campus space. The tough part is selling to students, right, who are already broke. I think that would be the tough part there. But if you just market it as cheaper than like Apple Care or whatever Apple's going to charge, then then I think yeah, that might work.
Like
And
I
the
think
no capital to start.
no, like I've fixed an iPhone screen by myself. Like it's really not that hard. Like you could, like if that was like you started off like turning people's computers on and off, and that's how you fixed it, and then you realize like, oh, this is like actually a revenue stream, and then you're like, all right, I need to learn a little bit more. Like you could turn on like 5 to 10 different YouTube videos and figure out how to change an iPhone screen, and then you just do, let's say, even $10 to $15 cheaper than iFixit or the Apple Store, and I think you could do it that way because even though college students are broke, you need technology to go to school nowadays. So
Hmm.
fixing it is a need. They have to get it fixed. So that like money is allocated in their budget. They need to get it fixed. They can't live without it. So you would, even though it could be expensive or like you'd be fighting for every dollar, if you came in at a cheaper price point and people knew it worked, I think you can make a killing there.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. That could work. You could get all the little tools too if you need it. They sell those like packets now with like all the little tools you need to do stuff now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be cool. And dude, it'd be easy to hire for if you want to have the shot, if you want to have like official hours, right? Like on in like a little room on campus, maybe you set up in the library or something, dude. I don't know. But you could have like someone sitting at this desk if it's which one was open 24 hours? Hayden? Was Hayden
Yeah.
open 24 hours? Yeah, you could set up in the back there, 24-hour service, dude. You could find a bunch of, I mean, for it's not super technical, you could find a bunch of people that could help.
Yeah. Yeah. 24 hours, like you do it in under 30 minutes instead of someone having to leave their phone. Like you do it like I think your best hours would probably be Sunday morning from like 9 a.m. to like 1 p.m. All the people who wake up and they like look at their phone and it's just destroyed. And they're like, what happened? Like, oh, I'm gonna call Ryan. Like Ryan's like always sitting at the library in the back of Hayden. I'm gonna go get it fixed. It's gonna be 30 minutes. Like, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, dude, you could have you could get a free number, like a free phone number on Google Voice, and then have it connected to like everyone you work with, all their phones. So like every time you get a call, you could route it to whoever's there. Yeah,
Oh,
that would
Google
be
Voice
cool.
is free? I didn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 dude, I like that. I meant to brainstorm some because I thought of that too. I have it in my notes, but I have no ideas under it. But just thinking about it now, I think an easy one would also be social media marketing for like local businesses because or it might have been more relevant when we were in school because social media was like a little newer. But I think you could still like crush it on TikTok with some small business owners. Um, yeah, just because you're naturally, like you're saying, you're optimizing kind of skills you're already good at. So if you can just make money from those or find a way to monetize those, then yeah, that seems like the lowest risk kind of path forward and side hustling in college.
Yeah. It would have to be like one of those things where it would like if you're not like dying for like the cash, you don't necessarily need it. It would have to be something that would be it would be like integratable into your life, right? Like you could easily add it to what you're already doing day to day. And then that way it's not necessarily like it's like, oh, it's just I do these things and then also doesn't get away of your studies, right? Which would be your main priority. Things like that. Like I think I've seen or heard of people who have done businesses in college for like laundry services to go get people's clothes and go wash them and bring them back. And I think if you could figure out a way to do that, like scalably, like at price point wise, and then just like who would be washing the clothes, that would like if you could pay, let's say $10 a week or something to get your clothes washed every week, would you or would you not pay for that $10 as a college student? Right? Like that's a Chipotle, that's one Chipotle or Chick-fil-A meal that you're replacing with getting all of your clothes washed for the week delivered, right? Like you drop it, you hand it to someone, and they give it back to you, right? That'd be
Hmm.
convenient, right?
That's true. And if you're, I don't remember if my dorms had free laundry, But dude, if your dorms have free laundry and you start doing that in the dorms, and you basically just tell everyone to bring your laundry to your dorm room, and then you're just running that machine or those series of machines just like all day Sunday, and you just have everything ready Sunday night for everyone's week. Yeah, that'd be pretty clutch and free, dude. That's like free money.
Hmm. That would be. It'd be super nice. Yeah, things like
Yeah.
that. I do look back and I'm like, oh, there's like these opportunities that could have capitalized on, and I think that those will always be there, right? Like it's like I could have done better there, but I going back to like one of the original things we talked about, the the clarity of the mindset wasn't there. Like obviously, I wanted to make like the whole point of going to school is to make money, right? Like yeah, you could be learning. It's to make a career, I guess, is the better way to put it, which is making money. But I would not have like if I had to. I thought to myself, if I went back and I didn't go to college, I don't know if I would have done right, like good. Like I think I would have ended up being more comfortable doing like nothing maybe, or like getting like an okay job, or like that. The compellingness of seeing other people do well, or like compellingness of seeing other people who wanted the best of themselves, or like were trying hard to like build a career, or like educate themselves, definitely put me like work towards having that clarity in the mindset that I enjoy having, or like I like to have today. Versus if I gave myself 4 years of just like, oh, here's like 30K in 4 years, I think I would be like 25 to 30 pounds fatter, and probably still in the same city working like an okay job. I think that would have been the distinct difference in those 4 years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have no idea what I would have done. I would also probably be pretty thick, or thick, a lot thicker than I am. But yeah, dude, maybe that is part of college though, is the maturity of mindset. Like it's easy to look back and say like, "Oh, why?" It's so clear to me now. Like I should have done X, Y, Z. But I think maybe college is where that growth happens. Because, dude, imagining 17 or 18-year-old Ryan going into the workplace, dude, right after high school, bro, that is not fun to think about. That just would have been sad, dude. That would have been a long road. But some people have it, dude. Some people do it and they like kill it. They crush it, right? Like they have that fire or whatever it is, that maturity of mindset. I don't know what to call it, but they're out of high school and already entrepreneurs, or they've already started their side hustle or whatever it is. So I don't know, different strokes for different folks, but it's hard for me to imagine not having gone to college.
Yeah, and I think that's where that balance of understanding that you're maybe going to college to one part is education, second part is like life experiences, and like third part is like growth. And if you were to like look at those metrics, those are like the how you evaluate how much you should probably be spending on your college tuition. If you're not going to be getting like the growth or the life experience or whatever it is like that is so high that it justifies 6 figures of college debt, then maybe you can find those same things at a college or maybe even a community college, somewhere else where you're not having to learn those things at the premium price tag that some of these schools are basically mandating.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple people that went to community college and then just finished up at ASU. So their degree is from ASU, right? But they didn't pay the ASU price tag. So, but yeah, I like it. I feel good about. Did you have other stuff you wanted to chat through?
No, the only other thing I have on here is like if you did optimize 4 years, like if you came back with like with the mindset you have today, right? Like you know yourself, you know what you can do, and you went back, you did 4 years of college. Where would you start, right? Like what would be the thing you would do? Like I was thinking about, would you go to like we said, like would you go to every class and say, look to the person next to you, hey, what's your day? Like blah blah blah. Like network with those, like talk to those guys. Would you talk to the professors as well? Like what would be like if you optimized with your knowledge today? Like you took yourself and spent 4 years in college. What is that approach?
Mm, yeah, that's fun to fantasize about, right? Like you think, uh, dude, it'd be a huge networking event, right? Like I'd be looking for people to employ at that point. Like I'd probably go get a software engineering degree, definitely go to office hours for professors, um, but yeah, with the knowledge I have now, I wouldn't glean as much from professors as I maybe would have back when I was in school, just because I kind of know where I want to go now, and like a professor isn't going to give me the tactical business advice that I'm looking for. So, yeah, dude, I would go to software engineering. I'd find the smartest people and I'd just befriend them and we'd just start a company together and live happily ever after. It'd be great. But
Yeah, I think that the it nets out to the same thing, right? Like network, take up the opportunities, like use like resources that are provided by the school, right? Like if it's like doing like hackathons, like whatever it is, like something the school is paying for to leverage all of those things. Like I almost would get like I almost was like I thinking about that like would it be trying to find the least amount of effort degree like getting and no offense like communications majors or anything but like getting a comm degree but then you spend all your time like you spend all your time like working like you spend all your time in like the engineering building and just like talking to like these folks that you're trying to pick up and do, right? Where like you have like the least amount of effort required for your actual degree, but you utilize all of the resources that are available within that campus for yourself to like just like completely you like yeah just like optimize every avenue.
yeah, yeah. I think that is a little optimistic and just getting a comm degree as much as I like the idea. But because I think there is a factor to leadership, or I think it's just a trust thing, right? When it comes down to it, it's like, okay, do you have the valid knowledge to tell me what to do? Like, do I trust you to tell me what to do? Do I trust kind of your insider foresight? So I think having like a degree or even going through the trenches with the people that you do want to network with will build not only your reputation, but your relationship. Um, Not to get
Yeah,
too meta, but as much as I'd love to get a comm degree, I think you'd have to get like a semi-serious degree. We're just throwing shade on
yeah, I know.
comm majors.
We don't mean it. We don't mean it. We don't mean it. But yeah, you're right. Like you have to be
Uh,
a compelling leader, and at that age,
right.
being a compelling leader is that like camaraderie of like pain, which is like school, right? It's like, oh, okay, like yeah, we went through this. Like I like we are both good at it. Like you're better than me, but let's like I know what I'm talking about at like at some level, right? Like let's go to on this path together. So yeah, I
Hmm.
see your point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that question. It's fun to think about. I think I'd still do Greek life. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's a networking event, right? Like that's truly what it is, right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. But I feel good about this. Do you want to cut it there, or you have any final notes?
No, I think that it's comes down to, you know, the episode really boils down as most things does. It's like you got to make the most of the opportunity, and as long as you're not over leveraging yourself through college debt, right? Like you're not putting yourself in this position where even if you got the best job you possibly could out of college, you could never pay it back. Then college might actually be a good choice for you. Like it might genuinely be. And so I think that's yeah, that's where I would leave it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also fun. Your last question was kind of like a fun way to phrase it, but um, another interesting way to phrase it is like, okay, starting now, like, how do you want the next 4 years to go? Like, how do you want to optimize that? And what are the opportunities in front of you that you're going to look back and say, oh, dude, I was so young. Like, I should have taken bigger risks. I should have put more money in Bitcoin. I, should have played, put more options trades in on the market or bought more real estate. I don't know what it's going to be, but but yeah, I think that's kind of another good takeaway here.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right, I think we're gonna call it there. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. We will see you next week. Peace.